control. At inter level, you have learned this chapter where you would have learnt that there are functional budgets, there are fixed budget and flexible budget, and different functional budgets are there. There's a sales budget, there's a production budget, there's a raw material purchase budget, there's a raw material consumption budget. All that you would have learnt at inter level. Now at final level, question can come on functional budget. One attempt a question has come. If you look at your study material, there will be no questions on problem solving. But in exam, one question did come, what you learnt at inter level plus what you learn in marginal costing limiting factor, which you learn as part of here. But that question did come in exam, so I will come to that question later on. But predominantly problem based area. So what are you going to learn in this chapter is how to prepare budgets. That is one area. What kind of control mechanism you can have. See, budgets are prepared. Budgets need to be used with some objective. So you'll use that objective for the purpose of control. See, controls are very, very critical in an organization. Every organization need controls against different risk they see. I had worked in an internal audit firm in Big Four. So when I worked there, we used to prepare something called as a risk and control matrix. Risk and control matrix. So basically, every risk an organization has, there needs to be a control associated with. So when you prepare a budgets, there are two types of control which are there. There's a feedback control and a feed forward control. I will touch upon that as we proceed. Then how do you communicate budgets to your employees? When you prepare budgets, do you involve the employees or you don't involve the employees? There are benefits of that, there are disadvantages of that. For example, an audit is to be done. For the audit planning, if the senior involves you, there's a motivation aspect for you, because you will feel that the senior has involved you, you will feel engaged with it and you will try to achieve within the budget. So there are benefits when I involve the subordinates in my budget preparation. But if I involve you, there's a possibility that you may do a lot of argument, you will try to say that it will take more time, so a lot of issues will happen. So there are advantages and disadvantages. So what are the advantages and disadvantages of involving a senior, and what are the different types of budget preparation process? There's something called as a top down budgeting and there's something called as a bottom up approach or participative budgeting approach. And once the budgets are prepared, when you do a performance evaluation, do you focus on the short term, do you focus on the long term, or do you focus on non-financial data? These are three different approaches of doing performance evaluation. That's also one more area which you do. And finally, the chapter says budget itself is not needed. Why can't we move beyond budgets, which is technically called as beyond budgeting? Why do organizations need budgets? Budgets may restrict you, so why don't you move beyond budget? So these are the broad areas in this chapter. Let's first understand what is budgetary control. So I'm going to start with the basic concepts which are there. A budgetary control is basically something which you prepare a budget. Based on the budgets, you're going to take some corrective action. Why do you need a budget? Is budget basically provides you the most important thing. It gives you a guidance. It gives you a guidance as to what you want to achieve. A budget will basically quantify the revenues, the expenses, the resource requirement. For example, if I don't know what I'm going to do for the next 1 year, how much revenues I'm going to make, how much production I need, how much raw material I need, if I don't have any idea on this, how do I recruit employees? How do I recruit employees? And I cannot recruit employees on the day I get a job, on the day I get a work from my customer. Let's assume I get a work from a customer, immediately employees cannot be recruited. I need employees in place. So I need to know how many resources are needed. And when I say resources, men, material, machine, money, all the 4 factors of production. How many men are needed? How many material would be needed? Do you need machines, more machines, lesser machine? Do you need extra money? All that planning has to be done. All that planning has to be done. If you don't prepare this plan, if an organization does not have a plan, basically they are planning themselves for the failure. So if you are not planning, indirectly you are planning to fail. You are planning yourself for failing. So a budget is an extremely important document. Not only a company prepares, in fact the country India itself prepares a budget. They say what are the revenue streams they are going to get, what are the expenses we are going to get, how much extra borrowings needs to be taken up, what is the fiscal deficit, so what is the revenue deficit. All this is prepared by them. That's a plan they prepare at India level. So at my level, I can prepare an expense budget which will tell me how much revenues I'm going to make. At your level, you should prepare a budget as to how you are going to prepare, how you are going to complete your CA preparation. So there should be a budget in place ideally, which will tell you for the next 1 week or 15 days or 30 days which subjects you are going to study, how many hours you are going to study. Unless that budget is in place, you will not know whether you are wasting time or not. You will not know, because you will feel, okay, another 20 months are there, my attempt is after 1.5 years, so why should I bother now? Then you will say another 1 year is there, then you will say another 6 months, and after that you will change the attempt. You will say, let's not write it in May, let's go to November. So all this will keep happening unless there is a plan in place. So plan is extremely critical. So an organization cannot fail. So they'll, and not only an organization, you ask at your home, either your father or mother, they'll have a plan in place for expenses, not only for expenses. In fact, I'll give a classic example. If you are planning to go for a trip, you will prepare all possible plans needed to execute the trip. You will have very clear idea saying what you are planning to do on day 1, day 2, day 3, day 4, where you need to go, how you need to go. All the plans would be in place, because you very well know if you don't have a plan in place, you will go ahead and struggle there. You know where you are going to stay, how you are going to go, all those plans would be in place. So like that, an organization needs to prepare a budget. It's basically a systematic control which will tell what the organization wants to achieve, and an extension of budgets, an extension of budgetary control is basically standard costing. Standard costing is the next stage of budgetary control. If you don't have a budget in place, you need not have standard costing, because standard costing doesn't work, because standard costing is all about comparison of standard and actual, or technically budget and actual, and based on that you take some corrective action. So systematic control of operation through establishment of standards, So you need to prepare a budget. Once the budget is prepared, standard costing comes into picture. Once the budget is prepared, standard costing comes into picture. The standard costing will do a comparison of your budget and actual, or technically standard and actual, and then take some corrective action based on that. Whatever you would have learned, material variances, labor variances, all that would be prepared every month also. It's not necessary that it has to be once a year type. You may prepare every month type. So once you prepare this every month, you will get to know what is going right and what is going wrong, and based on that you kind of take corrective action. So a budget is estimation of revenues and expenses. This is not the right meaning. This is the meaning from the point of view this chapter. It can be anything. Budget is an estimation of time spent to be prepared for completing your CA. So you can prepare budget for anything. You can prepare a budget for anything. Here we are more focused on the revenues and expenses. Now, if a budget is to be implemented by an organization, if an organization wants to implement a system of budgetary control, apart from your employee engagement, the senior being involved in the budget, most critical is variance analysis. Somewhere the standard costing needs to be there. If there is no standard costing, there is no need of preparing budget. You prepare a budget, you will give a budget today, next 1 month you want to do this for your preparation. After the end of 1 month, you don't even compare what happened. You prepare a next budget, that's all. You are least bothered what you did against the budget, then it's of no use. That budget itself is of no use. You are technically wasting time. There's no point in wasting time by preparing a budget. So one most important thing is timely variance reports. There are multiple points, but I'm discussing the important ones. Timely variance. Now anything can come in a case study, okay? So that's why these things are very critical, because every word will be very critical, because they'll suddenly give a case study saying that the company is planning to implement a budgetary control. They'll give a big para, and then finally they say explain what are the prerequisites for having a sound budgetary control system. Now you will have to write points from here and link it to the case study, because some case study will give some points saying that employees or the senior management do not normally follow the systems, and the employees are not following the rules and regulation. So you will give a point called a serious attitude to system, and then say in the case study I get to know that the employees are not, so maybe you will have to train them, and make them understand that the budgetary control is an extremely important area. So case study on prerequisites have not come till now, but anytime a case study can come, even from an area like this. So important areas: one, timely variance reports are necessary. These variance reports which you prepare should ideally be for a shorter reporting period. You cannot prepare once a year type. Once a year type will not work, because within a year so many things change. See, 20 years back, in a year changes were less in number. Now because of competition, what happens is the operating environment changes every 15 days or every week, every month, and you will have to take timely action based on that. You will have to take timely action based on that. Understanding the market requirement, you may have to change. You may have to change every 15 days or 30 days. You may have to change your plan. Changing the plan also happens. I'll explain that later. So you will have to take corrective action. You will have to take corrective action. Corrective action needs to be taken frequently. Corrective action needs to be taken frequently. That can be taken only if you have timely variance reports, and which are for shorter reporting periods. Which are for shorter reporting periods. Other things are not that critical. Serious attitude to system is basically the manager as well as the employees should agree on the budget and should follow the budget. What is serious attitude to system is, let's assume you are working on an audit. Your senior says it has to be completed in 10 days. You completed the audit. You call the senior on the 10th day saying that this needs to be checked now. He says, don't worry, I'll come in, and he comes on the 15th day, and then the audit is over. Next year also, next month he gave you another audit, 10 days. You completed on the 10th day. He came and checked it on the 15th day. Third time, if he gives you for 10 days, you will complete only in 15 days, because your attitude now has undergone a change. You have kind of felt that it doesn't work. These guys are least bothered about the budget and all. They give a budget, but they are not bothered about it. It's kind of known fact that budget would be given by them, but these guys are not bothered about the budget. So your attitude undergoes a change. So there needs to be a better attitude to the system. You have to agree to the system. Looking at an organization culture, you will know certain things are something which you cannot compromise. For example, in certain organization, if 10 o'clock is the starting time, you'll have to be there in office at 10 irrespective of whatever happens. Certain organizations have a flexible timing culture. They are not bothered about it. But some organization will say if a client meeting has to start at 3, you'll have to be there at 3. You cannot make your client wait. So certain things cannot be forgiven. One of the things is you cannot play with the budgets. You cannot play with this system. So there should be a serious attitude. Clear demarcation between responsibility areas is, one, you will understand something called as responsibility center in chapter 7. There are a lot of linkages, so I'll keep saying that you will learn, you will come across all those areas as we proceed, but I cannot explain them and again come back to this area. So clear demarcation between responsibility areas is, one, you will learn about something called as responsibility center. There's something called as cost center, profit center, revenue center, investment center, and every department will have a responsibility. For example, inspection department will have its own responsibility, production department will have its own responsibility, sales team will have its own responsibility. Now clear demarcation means whatever you are measuring them on, it should be in their control and it should be demarcated from the production guy. See, inspection, you cannot penalize the inspection guy because the production guy did not give the product to the inspection person. The inspection person can inspect only if the production guy gives the product. If he delays, obviously the inspection guy is going to delay. So that clarity should be there. This is one of the most important area. You learn this later on also, called as behavioral aspect. Reasonable targets. An audit can be completed in 8 days. The senior says 7 days complete, you will put in efforts. Senior suddenly says audit has to be done in 2 days. You will close the laptop and not even work, that's all. If he says 8 days is the normal audit period, you say you need 8 days, he says 2 days. You will close down the system because you know now nothing is going to happen. What is the point of getting these targets? There is no stress to be taken because it's impossible to complete it in 2 days. If ICA suddenly says the passing marks are 80 per subject, that's all. Most of the students are not going to pursue this course because you very well know that very few students end up scoring 80 in this paper. So there's no point in giving a target which cannot be achieved. So I need to be reasonable along with something called as challenging target. ICA ended up asking a 10-mark case study on this. Effect of budget difficulty on performance. It's an area which we'll discuss later, but he ended up asking a 10-mark case study in the recent exam. What is the effect of budget difficulty on the performance of an employee? So if I don't give reasonable target, the employee is not going to work. Employee will work only if there is a reasonable target which is given. Established data collection is, if you want to measure the performance at the end of the period, you can measure your performance only based on the actual. So for example, you prepare a plan saying that for 30 days you want to do this. Every day you are not even writing how many hours you studied. You're not even writing that point, that how many hours you studied, what you studied, not even mentioning. If I tell you at the end of 30 days, please measure your performance, you says I don't have data to measure the performance. So I need an established data. See, whatever points we are going to say, technically everything could be relatable to you. Everything could be relatable to you in some way or the other. All the areas, some technical areas may not be related because you learn something called as BPR, process innovation, all that maybe somewhere relation could be there, but some of the items may not be related. Most of the concepts which you are going to learn, budgetary control and all, I can perfectly explain with an example of an audit plan. Your senior and yourself, if you keep thinking that way, you'll be able to understand most of the components of your budgetary control chapter. Reports aimed at individual managers rather than general. This is an issue which many times happen. Because I used to work in CRISIL Limited. So what happens is, at the end of every month, a performance report would be prepared. Now, if the performance report says that the overall division grew by 5%, overall division expenses grew by 4%, profits grew by 1%, good job. I'm least bothered about this now. It is a good information for me, but I want to know my performance. Rather than you giving general information, company does well. Whether did I do well or not? Maybe I did not do well, so that information has to come to me that something has gone wrong at your end. Rather than giving general information, many a times this will happen that 10 people will work on an audit and suddenly the audit manager comes and shouts that things have not gone right. Now you are thinking you have done well, other people did not work. Why should I be penalized for other people not doing the work on time? You cannot be penalized. So your reports which you generate cannot focus on general observation. You cannot just say that this is what has happened, this is what has happened. I want an update on my performance. I want an update on my performance. Once a budget is in place, you will bring in a control mechanism. You will bring in a control mechanism. There are two types of control mechanism. One is called feedback control and another is feed forward control. I'll explain this first. What is feedback control is, you need to do an audit. 10 days is the audit timeline. 10 days got over, audit did not get completed. 12 days got over, audit got completed. At the end of 12th day, the manager says, can you please analyze why we could not complete the audit in 10 days. You get to know that the client was delaying in giving the information. That's the final end result which comes out to be. The client has delayed in giving the information. You get this understanding. Now next audit onwards, you send your information checklist maybe 15 days before the audit. This helps you in completing the audit on time. This is a feedback control. What you did is, you did a plan, you did an actual. After the actuals were done, you did a comparison of actual with the plan and took corrective action for future. This is called feedback control. Taking corrective action based on actual performance. Taking the corrective action based on the actual performance is called as a feedback control. Manager says audit has to be completed in 10 days. Today itself you are telling, I have done my planning, I feel day 2 we will be stuck with this issue, day 4 this problem will be there, day 8 this issue will be there. I don't see this audit getting over in 10 days, it will take us 15 days. Looking at the kind of work you are saying, it will take us 15 days to complete the audit. He said you will have to complete it in 10 days. You did your planning, everything, and you said you will complete it in 15 days. What you did is, you forecasted the performance. You did the forecast of the performance. Unfortunately, your forecasted performance is not meeting the requirement. The forecasted performance is not meeting the requirement. Then the audit manager says, what can be done? You say, let's add one more article assistant to the audit. We'll complete it in 10 days. So based on your forecast, you said things are not going to go right. So you tried to forecast things, and based on the forecast, even before your actual performance, you took some corrective action. Even before your actual performance, you took some corrective action. That's called feed forward control. Feedback means going back into the performance and checking. Feed forward means you're forecasting the performance, and based on that you're taking some corrective action. Feed forward is good mechanism, but becomes very difficult to implement. Audit was an easier example, but other things, forecasting and all, becomes very difficult. So feed forward implementation practically can be a challenging area, because it becomes difficult to exactly forecast what is going to happen. Feedback control, reaction after an action has taken place. Reaction after an action has taken place. This is a tool for corrective action. You are taking some corrective action. This is the thing, measurement of differences between planned output and actual output achieved, modification of subsequent action. Subsequent action is next to audit. Next to audit you are taking care. This audit you can't do anything. This audit you can't do anything. Time is gone. You have not been able to complete it on time. Limitations. There are a few limitations here. One major limitation is that variance reports, I said you'll have to be doing it timely basis. You did the audit in 10, I told you to do it in 10 days. You did the audit in 12 days and immediately you started working on the next audit. Immediately you started working on the next audit. You completed that audit. You keep on focusing on the next audit, and the manager tells you that please do an analysis why you did not complete that audit in 10 days. What happens is, because you're stuck with something else, you keep on focusing on that, you did not do this analysis. Then some fine day you did the analysis and found out one reason for delay in completing the audit. You thought this is the problem, but the issue is by the time you did 2-3 more audits, your problem itself has undergone a change, because what you thought earlier was the issue is not getting timely data from the client, but the issue could be one of the article assistant is very slow in working. One of the article assistant is very slow in working. The issue can undergo a change. The issue can undergo error confirmation and error revision, during which actual results may change again. Error confirmation and error revision, during which the actual results may change again, because there is a time lag between error detection, error confirmation and error revision. There is a time lag, because I tell you to do a timely error correction and then take a rectification action. If you can take that rectification action, see, the problem in the first month is going to be different, the problem in the second month is going to be different, problem in the third month is going to be different. COVID could be a problem in the first month. The first month COVID was a problem, supply side issue was there. Second month COVID is a problem, but the demand side issue is there. Third month COVID is a problem, labor availability is an issue. Fourth month COVID, so the problem can keep changing. The problem can keep changing. You cannot keep taking a corrective action for the problem which you are seeing. So if you see a problem, try to take an immediate timely action. Problem in month 1, action in the fourth one. By that time that problem itself is not there. By that time that issue itself is not there. So you will have to understand there can be a time lag between error detection, error confirmation and error revision, and what happens is, in this time gap the actual performance undergoes a change. The actual performance undergoes a change, and this is also very critical. I told you to do this check why you did not complete the audit, and you did everything and you say everything went well only, I don't see any problem. Or you found out a problem which is not the real problem. You found out some issue, but that's not the real issue. That's not the real issue. So success will depend more on your error detection system. If your error detection system is not working fine, you will end up again taking some action which is not needed. For feedback control, I think we prepare something called as control reports. That control report I was saying about all these points: timely variance report, corrective action, reports aimed at individual manager, all this is feedback control. Standard costing is feedback control. Standard costing is a feedback control. It's not a feed forward control. It's not a feed forward control. It is a feedback control. So feedback control reports are critical. They are a feedback device. Control reports cannot lead to a change in performance, but a change will happen if you take action based on the report. Some organizations say we have a system of budgetary control. They'll prepare a budget. Preparing a budget itself will not guarantee an improved performance. Based on the budget, you need to take some action. Just because you have prepared a plan to study does not mean you will study. You will have to study, check your performance, and then take some corrective action. Guidelines, basically more broadly the points from there. Disclose both accomplishment and responsibility. Sometimes what will happen is an organization will prepare a budget. In the budget you are going to talk about only the negatives, that doesn't work. You will have to talk about, one, what was the responsibility given to a person, what did he achieve, if he has done well, communicate that the performance has gone well, communicate if the performance has not gone well also. Points are going to be broadly related to what is seen earlier. Extracted promptly is timely, whatever timely variance reports. The variance reports have to disclose from standards. A standardized format is very critical. Why it is very critical is, you communicate this to the employee in month 1. When month 1 you communicate, you may need a presentation to be done also, because you will have to explain the report to him. When you explain the report in month 1, second month you change the report format. You change the report format, again you have to explain. You cannot keep wasting time on explaining your report to the other person. So a standardized format will help. A standardized format will help, and it will also be very clear to me as to what needs to be seen in the report and what corrective action do I need to take at my end. So for a feedback control reports are very critical. You could have, I'm not sure you would have done this at inter level, but at final level you do something called as a reconciliation statement. A reconciliation statement is basically a format which will help you in reconciling your budgeted profit and actual profit. This is a feedback report. This is a feedback report. It has to be prepared promptly. It has to disclose trends and relations. You may prepare a you may show a reconciliation report for the last 4 months. You will have the recent month and you will show the previous month. For example, a listed company, when they declare the results, they are expected to show the last quarter result, the last year, the same quarter is a year-on-year comparison, quarter-on-quarter comparison. So similarly, when I look at my report, I want to do that comparison. So it's better if those trends and relationship are shown here. The next thing which I said is your feed forward control. A feed forward control is exactly opposite of your feedback control. Here you try to forecast the performance. And based on the forecasted performance and what you want to achieve, you understand that there are going to be problems. You will know the problems at this stage also. If some of you are writing in November exam, if you have not done a proper planning at this stage as to how you are going to complete your preparation, then there are issues. You better do a feed forward control mechanism and understand, are you going to face any challenges. If you are going to face any challenges, you may have to increase the study hours from 6 to 8, 8 to 10, 10 to 12. You may have to cut down on some of the maybe some vacation was planned, something was planned, you may have to cut down on that. You may have to cut down on so a lot of things could be cut down so that you are able to achieve your performance, rather than you write your exam and then say, I did not do proper preparation, let me understand why I went wrong in my preparation. That's a feedback control. That's not going to help. Feed forward is obviously better, but it is slightly a difficult mechanism to see. An exam, an audit and all is an easier example and easy to do a forecasting also, but there are a lot of difficult things from an organization point of view. They are trying to do on the sales side, exactly forecasting how sales is going to happen can be a difficult challenge. So for example, the manager says, I want to do a sales of 5 crore rupee. So for 5 crore, I will do some planning. I may put in a feed forward as well as, in fact, feed forward and feedback both work together. Most of the organizations try to have both of them together. Why you need together is, you want to achieve a sales of 5 crore. If you want to achieve a sales of 5 crore, you give an information saying that let's open one more branch in Chennai, or one more retail store in Chennai, so that we'll be able to achieve, because you did your planning, everything. You said you have some 50 outlets, every outlet you did calculation, and finally said if you open the 51st outlet, we can achieve this sales. And if we add extra some 50 sales managers, the problem will be achieved. So that's your feed forward control. At the end, you'll have to again monitor the performance, understand which sales manager is doing well, which sales manager is not doing well, understand which retail outlet is doing well, which is not doing well. Forecasting of differences between actual and planned outcome. Forecasting of differences between actual and planned outcome, and implementation of action before the event. Implementation of action before the event to avoid such differences. What are the approaches on implementation? It should give you a early warning signal. It could give you an early warning signal. The early warning signal will tell you what can go wrong. Your audit cannot get over in 10 days, it will take 15 days. So you gave a early warning. Or a leading, what is leading indicator of performance is, there's something called as leading indicator of performance and lagging indicator of performance. What is an example of a leading indicator is, every batch I take feedback from students. I keep taking feedback at regular intervals. Maybe normally 3 stages of feedback I take, one after some 10-12 classes, second at the mid and third at the end. The feedback will tell me, it's a leading indicator of my performance, because it will exactly tell me where am I going wrong or right. The lagging indicator, basically a leading indicator of performance is student satisfaction. If my students are happy, it is going to indicate better performance for the future. This batch I got good number of students, but students are not happy. But still I am very happy because more number of students are there, but I am not able to understand that my students are unhappy at this point of time. Students are unhappy, but I was least bothered about it because I got more number of students. So I got some 100 students, 200 students, I was very happy about it. Now the problem is, if I don't measure student satisfaction at this point of time, which is a leading indicator of performance, the lagging indicator is next batch the number of registrations crashed. That is a lagging indicator of performance. That will tell you that things have gone wrong. Your financial statements will tell you things have gone wrong only after they have gone wrong. Financial statements are going to tell you things have, my revenue numbers will tell me things have gone wrong after they are going wrong. Whereas the feedback from students will tell you now itself that things are going wrong, please take action. Please take action. So it's a leading indicator of performance. Leading or a early warning signal would be given. You can prepare some contingency plan. You can have a trend analysis done. Adaptive mechanism is you are able to adapt to the external environment. What are the changes happening? You will be able to adapt to an external mechanism. Congruent system design is basically whenever you are trying to implement a system, whenever a new system is implemented, how do you react to the different changes? There are multiple parts of a system. In an organization, there are multiple departments which are there. They will have to interact with each other. So how does that interaction happen? How do you ensure that all the divisions work together? Guidelines on implementation. Whenever you are trying to implement anything, be it not only feed forward mechanism, you will see something called a Six Sigma implementation, BPR implementation. Anything you implement, this is the first step. Thorough planning and analysis. Planning is very, very critical for anything. This is a general point you can write in any implementation exercise. You may end up writing this in any implementation exercise. Rather than giving general information, at least these are points which will give you marks in exam. So instead of trying to be very generic, if you can write points like this, this will give you marks in exam. Thorough planning and analysis. Data on input variables must be regularly collected. Require action. See, whenever you are implementing a feed forward control, along with that feedback control will also happen. Along with that feedback control will also be there. Why do you need along with that feedback control? Because feed forward is something which you did a forecasting, then you please compare your actual performance, see things have still gone wrong. If gone wrong, you'll have to take some corrective action. Limitation is, this is what I was saying, estimation of uncertain future. Estimation of uncertain future. So whatever limitations you have because of uncertainty, because of this uncertainty, that is where the feed forward mechanism becomes slightly difficult. Feed forward mechanism becomes slightly difficult for someone to implement. Implementation of a feed forward mechanism becomes difficult because of this limitation of forecasting the future. Limitation of forecasting the future. Study of future is not well developed. You learn about standard costing at inter level. It's a well established mechanism. Every person knows how standard costing is done, how that report is to be read. If I suddenly tell you, can you please forecast what are you going to do for the next 10 days so that we complete the audit? Now you are thinking what to do. The senior has told, I am trying to do something. I am not able to understand what needs to be done. Whereas if it tells you that at the end of the day, please put in your performance and then do a comparison, or then do then analyze where have you gone wrong. It is slightly possible to do that, but it becomes difficult to do a forecasting of performance. It becomes, I am not saying it's impossible, but the difficulty level goes up. And also if you are trying to implement some system here, some system may have to be implemented that will have a cost. You may have to implement some machinery or some system mechanism may be implemented, that could be a cost associated with it. You will understand in one of the case study that there could be a cost associated with this. Okay, I'll come back to the behavioral issues part. I'll discuss few points, maybe in the next question we'll solve the problems, but let's come to the behavioral issues which are there as far as budgetary control is concerned. An extremely important area is the behavioral issue. Listen, if the first consideration for me is, do I involve the subordinate in the budget preparation process, or I don't involve him in the budget preparation process? If I involve you in the budget preparation process, if I involve an audit assistant in a budget preparation process, what will happen is, I'll ask him how many days it's going to take. You say 12 days. We discuss and then decide it on some 10 days or something, and I take your buy-in. When you have told 12 days it will get over, somewhere there will be an extra motivation or extra pressure that you will have to complete it in 12 days, because you are kind of owning that budget. You as an employee are owning that budget because you only gave a commitment of 12 days. If I push 12 days, the commitment levels would be different at your end. So when I involve a senior, when I involve a person, manager participation versus not participation. When I say manager, the term manager here does not mean the senior management or not your audit manager. Here the manager means it's like your article assistant. You are like the manager here. If you involve in the budget preparation process, it will lead to motivation. It will lead to motivation as well as better performance. But it also leads to an idea called as budgetary slack. Budgetary slack. I'll explain this term. This is a term which is practically, in fact, practically I have practiced budgetary slack. Okay. At every week in my organization, they used to ask me how many, what are the targets you want to achieve. I used to give a very low target. If I know 20 can be done, I'll say 15 as the number. I'll say 15 as the number. We will negotiate and maybe the final number ends at 18. I voluntarily give a lower number. If I ask you how many days audit will get over, you start with the number as 20 days. Now the senior is thinking, why did I involve this person in the planning process? Because this person is giving an irrelevant number. They know that how many days it will take, but you start giving a number of 20 because you are practicing something called as budgetary slack. You are overestimating the expenses or overestimating the time taken. Now the problem with this is, when there is a budgetary slack, there is another headache which comes in. If you say 20 days, senior knows 20 days it's not possible. If he agrees, time wastage. If he doesn't agree, then there are other issues. For example, if you tell 20 days and the senior doesn't agree and he says you'll have to complete it in 14 days. You are not agreeing to it, but he says you'll have to complete it in 14 days. Now you know it can be done in 14 days, but you voluntarily take 20 days to complete it and then finally pass a comment saying that I initially told you that it will take 20 days. You did not agree to my comment and you pushed me to complete it in 14 days. Unnecessarily we wasted that time. I told you clearly it will take 20 days. So if I change the budget, also there is a headache, because what you will do, you will try to disown the budget. As an employee, you will disown the budget and voluntarily take more time. And in the end you will say my initial estimate was right. These are all behavioral issue which happens exactly in the practical world. This may look like childish, but exactly this happens even at a senior level management. These things do happen even at a senior level management. That is why a lot of things have to be handled. Soft signals will be there. When you prepare a budget process, you will get some understanding whether this guy is seriously interested, not interested. Is it beneficial to involve this guy in the budget preparation process? Looking at your participation, the person will understand whether there is any use of involving this person in the process or no use of involving the person in the process. So if I remove that, it's a problem. If I don't remove that also, it's a problem, because if I don't remove it, you are going to waste time. If I remove also, it's going to be wasting time. But when you tell 20 days and I remove it to 14 days, there are a set of people who would still complete in 14 days. This is their way of working. You know the type of people that these people will not take it as a negative when I'm trying to cut it, because I'll try to give a justification as to why it will be completed in 14 days. So the problem with involving your manager or the subordinates in the preparation processes, it can lead to budgetary slack. Sometimes if you give unrealistic demanding targets, then again performance will get affected big way, because if you give unrealistic target, there is no motivation to achieve the performance. If something is challenging, for example, if you take a cricket match and it's a 20 over match, the target is 400, very well know that the second chasing team is not going to score 400. So more or less there will not be any effort to score it, because something which is possible, you put in efforts. Something which you looks like impossible, you technically say nothing is impossible, but more or less you are very much sure that it is going to be impossible. Efforts will not come from the person. So giving unrealistic demanding targets will also be a big challenge. So budgetary control, you will have to somehow manage this. How do you communicate your goals to the employee? How do you participate him in that process? And also ensuring your financial discipline. Many employees will bring in this concept of budgetary slack. If ICI asks you what is the passing marks you want, you will end up saying 20, 15, 10, 25, because you know what is easy to achieve. You will say a number which is lesser than that. So that is why it becomes challenging. That budgetary slack becomes a challenging issue. This is what was a 10-mark case study in exam. Effect of the budget difficulty on performance. This came in the recent exam. Now, let's first understand what are they trying to say here. First thing they are saying is you need to give a challenging budget. You need to give a challenging budget, but not an unrealistic budget. Give a challenging budget, but not an unrealistic budget. Now what happens is, as you increase the difficulty, this is the budget difficulty, okay? Your performance will be here. As you increase the difficulty, your performance will keep going up. As you increase the, just give me a minute. This is your budget difficulty. Your actual performance is at here, okay? As you increase the difficulty, you are keeping on improving the performance. You are better than the budget. You are better than the budget. You are still putting in more efforts. You are slightly weaker than the budget, but still you are putting in more effort. As you keep increasing the difficulty, your graph will come down then. Your performance will start coming down. Your performance will move something like this. You will keep putting in more and more performance as difficulty goes up. As difficulty goes up, you will keep putting in more and more performance. But beyond a level, if difficulty increases, your performance will crash. So the best level is somewhere here in this graph, okay? Somewhere here, okay? At this level, the difficulty could be here, okay? You are still not achieving the budget. But the performance is the best. So what they say is, the best performance may come at a budget which is not achieved, but it's a challenging budget. It's a challenging one. It's good to give a challenging budget. Let's not worry about whether it is achieved or not. So what the first point says is, budget level that motivates the best level of performance may not be achievable. That motivates the best level of performance may not become achievable. In the end, it may not get achieved, but you will have to take care of one aspect. Don't make it too much unrealistic. If you make it too much unrealistic, then the performance will crash. Down. In contrast, an achievable budget, for example, if ICI tells you need to score 30 marks, it's easily achievable, let's assume. You're also not putting in more efforts. 30 marks is easy to get. So you end up getting 35 or 40. 30 is the number they say. You end up getting 35, 40. Whereas your better performance can be even 50, 60, 70. So in contrast, an achievable budget may lead to lower level of performance as managers no longer aspire to meet the target, because there is no challenge. When there's no challenge, you are kind of chilled. You say it's easy to achieve, so you are kind of achieving it. So this is what happens as far as the budget difficulty is concerned. As you increase the difficulty, the performance will also keep going up, but beyond a point, the performance will start crashing down. This is the gap. This is the positive gap, okay? This is the positive gap between the budget and the actual. This is a negative gap between the budget and actual. Negative gap means you have not achieved the budget. It's okay to have small negative gap. In small negative gap, your actual can still move up. The graph is not properly done, but the actual can be even better. It's not that you have to always achieve budget. At this stage, you achieve the budget, but here you are lower than budget, but better than your previous actual. But the important part is, if you try to make it more and more strict, it will become a performance which is not achievable. Budget will have a motivation effect if accepted by manager. What is this motivation effect? If you agree saying that you will complete an audit in 10 days, now you are motivated. You are very much motivated, and somewhere you feel that there is a responsibility on your head. You will have to complete this in 10 days. You somewhere have taken it as a personal challenge. Most of the organization important objective is, personal goal of an employee should become equal to the corporate goal of an employee. If that becomes, all problems are solved. But many a times your personal goal would be different. For example, your goal could be that you want to complete a chartered accountancy, so you need time for preparation and all. Now, if your audit firm is ensuring that you prepare well, and also they give you that appropriate study leave, they also ensure that you are not overworked, so they're able to balance both. On one fine day, if they want you to put an extra effort and do a night working, you may not say no to them, because you are kind of ensuring that in the days when things were going right, they were giving you time, suddenly there is a requirement there, you will try to put in that extra effort. If budget is not accepted, if the employee is not accepting to the budget, then it's better to give demanding targets. What is demanding target? Is challenging target. Why challenging target is basically this, that motivates the best level of performance. Generally, demanding targets are seen as more relevant than less difficult targets. But the last point is negativity gets in if targets are too challenging. Negativity gets in. This was a 10-mark case study in exam. This was a 10-mark case study in recent exam related to this. Finally, they say you explain the effect. I think it was a direct theory question, or it was a question where they gave a case study. I don't remember, but somewhere on related points was this. Clear? We'll discuss a little bit more about the behavioral issues in the next session and then do the case studies on that. I'll end with this. If there are doubts, I can take it up. Just participation in budgeting process. So we need to do an audit of ABC Limited. You are one of the audit member, you are part of the audit team. Do I need to involve you in the planning process or not is the question now. So do I involve you or not? There are two types of approaches. One is called a top-down budgeting process, and second is a bottom-up budgeting process, or participative budgeting process, In a top-down budgeting approach, the senior will come and say audit has to be completed in 10 days, no questions asked, nothing done. He just says completed in 10 days, that's all. He gives you a target and goes, that's all. He'll come, give you a target and will leave. So the top management will tell that this needs to be done, that's all. They are not going to ask for any discussion also, or sometimes some discussion can happen, but mostly your inputs will not be taken into consideration when I prepare a budget. Budget is centrally prepared with little influence from subordinates, The benefit is it's quick to prepare, because the audit manager need not sit with you. You will come with your own arguments. You will say that this is not possible, that is not possible, this needs to be done, that needs to be done. So you will try to argue a lot. Instead of doing all this, let's quickly give the target and then leave it. But the issue with this is the senior may not be aware of the ground reality. He is not aware of the ground reality, so he may prepare an inaccurate budget. For example, let's assume that's a company which has multiple retail outlets. Sitting at Bombay, the head office, it's difficult for someone to tell what is the sale potential of Coimbatore branch. So let's assume if they are sitting at Bombay and then they are preparing a budget for Coimbatore branch without taking any inputs from the branch manager, there's a possibility that the budget can be inaccurate. And also motivation issues are there, because if I am not involving you, you are not motivated. Most of the time this approach is not good. This is not the preferred approach, but still sometimes I will have to use this approach. See, the reason for using a participative budgeting process is the employees will become motivated. But there are certain set of employees, even if you involve them in the budgetary process, they are not going to be motivated. Even if you put them in the budgetary process, you tell them that you will have to. Sometimes these employees are such that what will happen is, if you tell them to put it in the budgetary process, they'll say, don't waste my time. In their mind, they'll be thinking you are unnecessarily wasting my time. You prepare the budget and give me the target, I'll achieve whatever you tell me. Rather than you telling me, you involving me, unnecessarily waste of time. So sometimes there are set of employees whose personality characteristics are like that. So there are different set of people in different organization. Within an organization also, different kinds of employees are there. So where personality characteristics of participation leads to no benefit. If you tell these people to be involved in it, and because of their involvement, no motivation effect is going to come in. In that scenario, instead of involving them, you please prepare the budget and communicate to them. You prepare the budget and do the communication and tell them that this needs to be done, that's all. You just come and say, this is what is the target, please achieve it. Now this is up to him, how do he wants to achieve it. He will start targeting, achieving the target. So you just go ahead and communicate that this needs to be done. So once that is communicated, this guy will start working on it. Participation will not lead to commitment from subordinates. The motivation, this is basically the same point. No benefits. See, what is the benefit of participation is motivation. What is the benefit of motivation is there is going to be a commitment from your side. Both the points are technically same. So if there is not going to be any commitment from the employees, what is the point of involving these guys? sometimes the environment is fairly stable. There are no uncertainty in the market. You don't have any big uncertain factors in the market. When there is no uncertainty in the market, when things are fairly stable, when there is a standard input output relationship, standard processes are there, when your involvement itself is not needed because the things are going fairly stable. So I can say the target is you have to increase your revenues by 5%. It's a fairly stable market, no uncertainty. Suddenly COVID is there. If COVID is there, I may want your participation because I want to know what is happening in your micro market. Rather than just having an overall view of what is happening in India, I may want to know certain, see during COVID also there are certain sectors which did really well, and there could have been certain location which would have done well because they would not have been affected that much by COVID, or maybe one location got affected badly, the other location got the benefit because the demand which was coming in this location could have got diverted. So when there is stability, it is always better to go ahead with your this approach. For example, in the organization which I used to work, every month there were targets, and the targets were kind of known to us that based on the number of employees, there is going to be a set target for the number of employees. So we used to work on number of companies, so there used to be a target on the number of companies to be done, and it's a known rule. A person who has a 1 month experience will have this much target, 3 month experience will have this much target, 6 month experience will have this much target, 12 month experience will have this much target. So the rules were clearly set. So that time every month there used to be no discussion, every month the targets used to come and the targets were clearly defined. So our involvement was not needed. Whenever there was some revision to be done and whenever some changes were to be done, then there is a discussion which used to happen. See, whenever a discussion used to happen, it used to run for 2-3 hours. It's not that it's so easy to complete a discussion. So every month that discussion was not needed, but because it was a stable kind of a situation, when in a stable kind of a situation, there was no need for involving us in that budgetary process. When is bottom up approach preferred? All scenarios except this. Your bottom up approach or participative budgeting process is to be adopted in all scenarios except these. It's more dependent on the personality characteristics of the employees. There are certain people whom whatever you do, they are not going to be motivated. If they are not going to be motivated, there's no point in spending time on them. Bottom up approach or participative approach. Bottom up approach, or whatever was the benefit there will be the limitation here, whatever was the limitation there will be the benefit. There the benefit was quicker to complete. Here the limitation is it will take time consuming. There it was quicker to complete, here it is time consuming. There it was inaccurate budget and motivation issue, here it will be accurate budget and motivation issue. Accurate budget and motivation issue. One more point they have talked about is budgetary slack. One of the point is budgetary slack. Budgetary slack, as I had told you earlier, you are trying to overestimate the resource requirements. You are trying to overestimate the resource requirement. Why are you doing this overestimation of the resource requirement? Resource could be men, material, machine, money, it could be any of them. Why do you do an overestimation? So that it's easy to achieve. See, I have put in a budgetary slack in your class. For example, I know I complete classes in 180 hours. The planning or the amount of hours I have planned for is 240 hours at this point. I know I'm going to have some cancellation of classes. So when I have to cancel class because of XYZ reason, I should not come under pressure. That's why I have given a deadline of 4.5 months. Now this budgetary slack at my end was okay because it's not going to affect. Sometimes it can affect my sale also, because if I had told that the classes get over in 3.5 months, there's a possibility that most students could have joined. There's a possibility that because I'm stretching the class till September, few students are not joining. So that could be an effect which is there on my sales also. But I was kind of okay with it because I didn't want that issue. So I wanted some flexibility at my end. So I have done something like this where I have said that classes will get over by September 30. Past experiences, I know that I mostly completed by September 5, September 10, September 15. But I don't want a situation. There was a situation where 1 month I could not take a class in one of the SFM batch. I could not take a class for 1 month because of some reason. So I could not take class, I think, for a 20-day period. So I don't want to be affected by such challenges which can come here and there. So that's where that flexibility was built on. But this flexibility organization cannot have, because for me this flexibility is okay because Bharadwaj Institute is not getting impacted because of this. But if an organization has this flexibility, you have put this resource for September on this work. So you cannot allot him any other work. If you cannot allot him any other work, you cannot get extra revenues. So unnecessarily there will be an impact on the revenues and profitability of the company. So budgetary slack is something which gives flexibility to the employee, but it's a problem for the company. Suitable in all situation where top down approach is not to be followed, where the top down approach is not to be followed, you follow all this situation. Okay, now you have involved them in the budgetary process. After involvement, at the end of the month or at the end of the quarter, you need to do an appraisal of that performance. You need to do an appraisal of the performance. So what you do in appraisal of the performance is you compare your actual and budgets and then try to give a commentary on it. Let's take few examples. Let's assume I need to supply some product to my customers. I need to supply some product to my customer. Machinery is needed for manufacturing the product. Now in this machinery, what is going to happen is I have been given a budget saying that you should spend only 5 lakh rupees on repairs and maintenance of machinery. I very well know that this machinery is likely to break down in another month. This machinery is likely to break down in another month, but I don't have the budget to spend money. I don't have the budget, or if I spend the money, I will exceed the budgeted amount. I'll exceed the budgeted amount. Depending on the performance appraisal style of the management, depending on the performance appraisal style of the management, as a subordinate, you may decide to do this maintenance or you may decide not to do the maintenance, because some organizations are very particular that you should not exceed the budget. You should not exceed the budget. They are more conscious about the cost side. They are more conscious about the cost side. So what you will do is you will not do this maintenance. You will not do this maintenance. So at least you survive for 1 month. You survive for 1 month. Let's see what happens in the next month. We'll see that time. So you don't want to be impacted by this extra cost in your performance appraisal. So what you do is you are more or less bothered more about this. This is also called as a budget constraint style. I'll explain the styles, but you are more bothered about the cost side. You are more bothered about the cost side. So you don't want, your focus is on meeting the short term target. Your focus is on meeting the short term target. So because of your focus on that, you may decide to take certain decisions which are not in the best interest of the company. Which are not in the best interest of the company, and you are taking this because of your management style. The management style is, the focus is, for example, an audit needs to be completed in 10 days. Now you found out that there are some issues in the company which needs further investigation, but you know that the manager is such a person that if you make it 11th day, he'll start making your life horrible. So what you do is you are least bothered about the issues which you see. There could be a fraud in the company, but you are ignoring it, completing the audit in 10 days. Now you know the end effect of this, what can happen later on, because it is going to end in the end affect the company, but you are not bothered about it because you wanted to complete the audit in 10 days because of the style of the management there, style of the management. Budget constrained style, focus on your ability to meet the audit timeline on short term basis. My focus is you should complete the audit on time. That's all. That is the budget constraint style. Focus is, are you meeting the budget target which has been given to you? Profit conscious style is, you are focusing on effectiveness of the audit. You are focusing on ensuring, I am just giving you in relation to the example which you can understand. Obviously you cannot write audit as an example there, but I am just linking it there. Your focus is completing an audit which gives you a true and fair view in the end, rather than trying to just quickly complete the audit. Focus is on effectiveness of unit operation in relation to the long term goals of the organization, in relation to long term goals of the organization. Non-accounting style, I am least bothered about the accounting data. What is accounting data? I am not bothered about the profits, I am not bothered about the cost, I am not bothered about the revenues. Then what will be non-accounting style? You have completed the audit, the manager will send a feedback form to your company, will send a feedback form to the company and ask a feedback about you, or he will give a feedback form to your peers and ask a feedback about you. So I am going to use non-accounting data. I am going to use non-accounting data. Examples of non-accounting data could be customer satisfaction, employee satisfaction, employee attrition, quality of product, percentage of defective product, percentage of breakdown. So all these are your non-accounting data which I am going to look at. You discuss about non-accounting data in detail in chapter 7, where financial measures of performance is there and non-financial measures of performance is there. So my focus or the style of performance evaluation can be different in different situations. 3 styles are there. One style, I don't want you to deviate the 10-day timeline. I don't want you to deviate the 10-day timeline. I'm not bothered even if you compromise on the quality. I'm not bothered even if you compromise on the quality. Second style is I want you to do a proper job, have proper documentation, so that over the longer term, if any inquiry comes or if any issue comes, I do have proper documentation to manage the issue. Third scenario is least bothered about the accounting angle. I'm not bothered about the accounting angle. I am going to look at items like customer satisfaction, employee satisfaction, quality of product, all those points would be looked at. This is not a good style of performance evaluation. This is not a good style of performance evaluation. Still, some organizations may implement it because it depends on the type of people. There are certain type of people, if you give them flexibility, they will start misusing the flexibility. So if you tell them that 10 days an audit has to be completed, but it's okay even if you take 12 or 30 days, but ensure that you complete it properly. An audit could have been completed in 10 days with proper accuracy, but still you deviate and keep increasing it to 12th or 13th day. Budget constraint style is not a good style, but still organizations do implement it. It's a style where the employee is always under constant pressure. You're always under constant pressure because your focus is always to meet the target. So when there is always a target, for example, if there was a situation where even one class I cancel, my completion date will have to get delayed. If even a single class getting cancelled and the completion date can get delayed, I'll be under constant pressure because even if there is some commitment of some other commitment which I get, I cannot cancel the class because I know if I cancel the class, the timeline will get extended. So I'll always be under constant pressure. So that style will not work. Whenever there is a tough target or whenever there's always a target on top of my mind, it will lead to a lot of pressure. Lot of focus would be on managing cost. Sometimes people may even fudge the data. They may even end up giving wrong data input. They will try to play with the data, manipulate the data. Manipulation of data can also happen. In a budget constraint style, there is a high tension. There is a manipulation of accounting information. You may try to manipulate the data and give it to the top management. You may try to manipulate because anyway the decision is going to be taken based on this, so you try to manipulate the data and give it. Your relationship with superior as well as colleague is going to be poor. You will have strained relationship with your superior because you don't like the superior because he puts too much pressure on you, and sometimes if he needs some work, you will also not try to do something for him. So the relationship with your superior, with your colleague can also be poor, and there is always a high involvement with the cost side. There's always a high involvement with the cost side. Profit conscious and non-accounting style, both are good styles of management. Both will have medium job related tension. You are not bothered about manipulating the accounting information. A good relationship with superior, good relationship with colleague. The only change is involvement with cost. Involvement with cost. In a profit conscious style also, there is some focus on the cost side because profit is basically ensuring that over the longer run I ensure remain profitable. So there will be something on the profitability being focused on. In non-accounting style, I'm least bothered about the accounting information. I'm not bothered about the accounting information. In fact, manipulation of accounting, it says little. It can in fact be no also. I'm not going to do any manipulation of the accounting information. The answer says little. The answer says little. So let's proceed with whatever they mention. But it could technically even be no manipulation of accounting information. Budget constraint style, focus on short term. Profit conscious style, focus on long term. An organization tries to have profit conscious and non-accounting combination. Profit conscious style will focus on financial measures of performance like ROCE, ROI, EVA. All these are financial measures of performance. Along with that, you will consider non-financial measures of performance also, which you learn in that chapter. There's something called as building block model. There's something called as TBL approach. So there are certain non-financial measures of performance. You try to combine both. Now, after learning so much about budgetary process, the last segment of the chapter, which I'm not going to discuss today, I'll be doing some discussion on some case studies on the behavioral issue. There are certain limitations of traditional budgeting process. Irrespective of how many ever times I say budgeting is important, many people don't do budgeting. At my end also, I don't prepare budget every time. I don't prepare a budget of every month. Some broad calculation I may do, but still a budget is not prepared because it's time consuming. And there are other limitations also. Just preparing a budget will not lead to better performance. Just because you have prepared a budget, it is not going to lead to a better performance. Time consuming, costly to implement, Just preparing a budget will not lead to better performance. Sometimes it can lead to blame game also within the organization. There can be a lot of blame games which can happen based on the budget, and it can sometimes impact the flexibility in an organization, because what you said, you told me the budget, don't do any maintenance or don't spend more than 5 lakh, so I don't have the flexibility to spend more money now. I don't have the flexibility to spend money. Time consuming, costly, constraints responsiveness or flexibility. I don't want to do maintenance. I don't want to do maintenance because if I spend more than 5 lakh, you will question me. I don't want to do stock audit because if I spend more than 10 days, you will question me. I thought stock audit is critical. We have done one physical verification. We did 25 samples. Lot of issues have come. Ideally, you should increase the sample size, but you are not ready to increase the sample size, because if you increase the sample size, it is going to lead to more time. Barrier to change, adds little value. Why it's add little values? Mostly what happens is you just prepare a budget. After that, you don't do anything based on that. Just preparing a budget alone will not lead to results. Focus on cost reduction and not value creation. There's something called as value analysis, which I'll discuss later, but major focus on the budgetary side would be on the cost containment or on the cost reduction. Sometimes this can be not updated. Your budgets may not be updated. Every month there is a budget which you have, but the overall budget is prepared once a year. Mostly it's prepared once a year, and in fact there are many organizations where the annual budgeting process go for 3-4 days. All the top management sits, even you involve the middle management, and you spend 3-4 days of time and then prepare a budget. So you don't have the flexibility of spending this amount of time every month or every quarter. So you will prepare once a month, once a year type. And this is also very critical. Unsupported assumptions and guesswork. Last year revenue is 5 lakh. This year increase revenue by 10%. What is the logic of 10%? Nobody knows. There's no logic of increase by 10%. So you will sometimes just take the previous budget and then prepare a budget on top of that. There's something called as a zero-based budgeting process, where you don't take the previous budget. Every amount you put it in the budget, you will have to explain a logic for that. If I ask you why do you need 10 days, you will say last time we took 10 days. That's not the logic. Why do you need 10 days? You will have to break it down, saying cash on the vouching side this much time will take, on the ordering process, on the procurement process, on the physical inventory. So you will have to give exact timelines as to why you are taking 10 days, rather than trying to give an information saying that last time we took 10 days, so this time also we will take 10 days. Most of the times budgeting process reasoning would be what you did last time. Based on that you will prepare the budgetary process. Okay, despite all the benefits which are there of the budget, we looked at some of the limitations of traditional budgeting. One is your time consuming part and all is there, but one major issue is there is it can restrict sometimes flexibility. It can sometimes and most of the times it can restrict the flexibility. I have given a budget to my employees. The budget is prepared. I break it down into maybe every quarter budget, and then give it to the employees and say that please start working towards the budget. COVID comes in, obvious expectation is you will have to have a change in strategy at that point of time. When COVID has come in, there is a need for change in strategy. But if budget, too much focus is there on the budget, what the manager would do is he would try to focus on achieving what is given in the budget. But at that time there is a need for some correction to be done on the budget side, because budget is not going to really work at that stage. Because what has happened is you have given a budget, that budget you wanted some XYZ thing to be achieved, but the problem is once budgets undergo, once the external circumstances undergo a change, there is a need for continuous revision in budget. You will have to adapt to the external environment. That much flexibility is not there as far as the traditional budgeting process is concerned. The traditional budgeting process may restrict the flexibility of the organization, and you will not be responding properly to the changes in the external environment. Whatever changes are happening to the external environment, the proper response may not come. In this approach. So then what an organization needs to do is, it needs something which is more flexible, which gives an organization a tool to fight the changes in the external environment. Now what happens under traditional budgeting is there is a fixed target which is given to an employee. The fixed target is going to say that we want the sales from your side to increase by 20%. We want the overall profit of this division to go up by 15%. So there are certain set of targets which are there. They are fixed annual targets which are given. What beyond budgeting says is, let's not work with targets which are internal to the company. Let's work with targets which are external. For example, one of the target could be that I want a market share of 2%. Now market share of 2% basically mean if market is going up, I should also grow up the same rate to increase my to maintain the market share and grow at a better rate to increase the market share. When COVID comes in, my budget would if I am following beyond budgeting, what will happen is I know that everyone in the industry is impacted, so I can also take a hit at that point of time. So beyond budgeting basically tries to eliminate all of this. Now under traditional budgeting process, there are few points which are critical. Now listen. One, there is a fixed annual target. You prepare a fixed annual target. Here we have rolling monthly or quarterly targets. Rolling monthly or quarterly targets based on external benchmarks. Individual performance evaluation. You look at the performance of every individual on a standalone basis. Performance analysis of entire team. With focus on meeting external targets. Your focus is on meeting whatever the external targets you have. Not too much focus on customer. Extensive focus on customer. Here what I have is, I will prepare something called as customer oriented teams. I want my customers to be extremely happy, so the focus is going to be on the customer oriented teams as far as this area is concerned. You want your customers to be extremely happy. Your resource allocation. What is resource allocation is, how many people does a team need or how many people does a manager need. Resource allocation happens once a year type. This happens timely and as and when needed. As and when you need resources, you will try to allocate them. No focus on coordination among the various teams. So within an organization there can be multiple teams. My focus is not on coordination among the various teams. Here the focus is going to be on, you need a better coordination among the various teams, because your fight is with the external customer or your fight is with the external competitor, rather than most of the times when it happens traditional budgeting process, one manager will think the other manager to be his competitor. That is how internally there would be a fight between them. Maybe there is open fight is not there, but somewhere the focus would be on that I need to perform better than the other manager in the company. Under beyond budgeting, your focus is to perform better than the other competitor outside the organization rather than within the organization. Your planning process, budget process, reward process, everything. There are some 6-7 processes which are there. One is planning, your target, your reward structure, your performance evaluation, resource allocation. All of this in this stage happens once a year type under your traditional budgeting. Here you do it on a continuous basis as and when needed. Beyond budgeting, focus is to move beyond budget due to its inherent limitations. The inherent limitation is, one is your time consuming another angle, but the most important is you have an issue with meeting targets. And the issue comes because your targets do not undergo change, and because of that somewhere the flexibility is impacted. The flexibility, at times you need better flexibility and you want to respond to the changes in the environment. So you need to have that flexibility within the organization. If already planned for an audit saying that you will have to complete in 15 days, if you come across an issue also, you don't want to spend more time on that because your focus is on completing the audit within 15 days. Techniques such as rolling forecast and market related targets. Rolling forecast means at any point of time, for example, what happens is every company does budgeting once a year. So most of the times what will happen is in the month of Feb or March, they will prepare a budget for the next 1 year. Assume I have reached the month of December. I have no idea what the organization wants to do 4 or 5 months later. I have no idea what the organization wants to achieve 4 or 5. I am in the month of December. I don't know what the organization wants to do in the month of April 2022. Let's assume we are in December 2022. We have no idea what the organization wants to achieve in April 2022 or April 2023. I have no idea because the budget is not there for the next year. Next year budget will come in the month of February or March. You will prepare it for a year. So many a times what can happen is the budget can be left over only for 3 months or 6 months. What happens in a rolling forecast is you will keep preparing budget. For example, you will have budget for Q1, Q2, Q3, Q4. Q1 is over, next Q1 budget would have been prepared, a rolling target. You will keep preparing. Q2 is over, next Q2 would have been already prepared by the organization. Q3 is over, next Q3 would have been prepared. So at least I am clear as to what I need to do for the next 1 year. The rolling target could be for a year. They may prepare monthly wise, quarterly wise, whatever the organization wants to do, but the plan is to have at least clarity at least for the next 1 full year. Under the traditional budgeting process, somewhere this issue can come because your budget period may not be left over. You may not be left over with the budget period. So under that challenge, you will not be clear as to what the organization wants to achieve. Benefits, it's a more adaptive process, which is ability to respond to change. I want my organization to be able to respond to the changes in the external environment, be it favorable changes or adverse changes. Sometimes there can be favorable changes. I want the organization to respond to this, and sometimes it may be an unfavorable change like a COVID. Then also I want my employees to respond to the change, and I give lot of autonomy to my employees. Lot of freedom is given, so it's a decentralized process. You will learn about there's something called as levels of decentralization. Sometimes you will do an extensive decentralization, sometimes you will do a limited decentralization, sometimes you may not do any decentralization and manage the operations in a centralized manner, and different organizations will work differently. As you become bigger and bigger, you will have to start decentralizing it. If you are a smaller organization, centralization is possible, or the control from a head office is possible. For example, some of you could be working in a big four, so you have multiple branches across India. You could have some 10 branches, 12 branches. The branch level action would be taken by the individual respective partner. You may get some guidance from the top management, but the branch level action would be taken by the individual. In fact, not at the branch level. In fact, that individual branch can also be split into 4 or 5 service lines, and each of the service line are under the control of respective person. You will have to give that much of freedom, because unless you give that amount of freedom, you will not have the flexibility to respond to a change. Suddenly some issues happening in my location, I cannot keep interacting with the head office. They understand what is happening and then I take an action. In that gap, the issue itself would got sorted out, or the new issue would emerge. So under beyond budgeting, what happens is I give extensive freedom to my employees. So I give lot of freedom with appropriate set of controls. There are going to be some set of controls which are going to be there. I'll be evaluating that performance also. There are ways of evaluating it. There are financial performance indicator, there are non-financial performance indicator. So I want to evaluate their performance, but I also want to give them target. I also want to give them freedom. How do I evaluate their performance? I evaluate their performance with KPIs, key performance indicator. For example, Bharadwaj Institute may say one of the KPI for my classes is going to be 1, number of students we get. The number of students indirectly indicate the customer satisfaction. Second, every batch we take a feedback, so customer satisfaction score. We may prepare a score called as customer satisfaction score. So how much is the customer satisfaction score of the employee? So that is one more thing they can say. Third, looking at the market, you know the number of students who register for CA classes. So what is the market share of Bharadwaj Institute as compared to the entire registration, or maybe specific to this location? If I can separately get to know how many people are writing from Chennai, so what is the percentage registration, or what is the percentage of students? So that's a market related target I may have. These targets will give me a guidance as to what needs to be done, and will also help the organization to measure my performance. But they want to give full flexibility to me. They will allow me to decide how do I want to structure my classes. They'll allow me to decide whether I want to start with chapter 10 or I want to start with chapter 2 or I want to start with chapter 1. So they give me full flexibility, allow managers to react to the external environment. So they'll give me full flexibility, but somewhere also keep in mind certain key performance indicator which they want to track. There are items which they may want to track. Benchmarking is basically benchmarking your performance with others in the industry and not benchmarking with the peers. Benchmarking is comparing technically. Your performance would be tracked against others in the industry rather than within the organization. Timely resource allocation. So suddenly demand of a product goes up. So there are 10 products a company make. I see in my area demand for product 10 is going up within the 10 products. So I want to cut down on other products, or I want to slightly reduce other product and focus more on this product. So I am taking that action, allow managers to react to the environment. But when I take that action, I need more people. Because the existing set of people cannot work extensively on this product. So I allow for an appropriate resource allocation also. I allow the manager that you can go ahead and recruit people, or you go ahead and take others from other product or other processes and then try to work according to the changes in the environment. These are okay, I think all these points will be critical because it can come in a case study. Improving future result, encourages innovation. Okay, beyond budgeting is critical or needed only when the environment in which you are operating goes through lot of changes. The environment in which you are operating goes through lots and lots of changes. For example, if the environment is fairly stable, you don't see too much of an issue in the external environment, be it your competitors. The external environment comprises of competitors, customers, suppliers. The external environment is not that much is not undergoing that many changes. It is fairly stable kind of an environment. Most of the industries go through rapid changes. So if there are rapid changes in the external environment, then beyond budgeting would be suitable. If you see the environment in which you are operating is fairly stable, for example pharma industry, let's take an example of pharma industry. If pharma industry is not undergoing too many changes, if there are no new things coming up, no new products coming up, no new competitors are coming up, no new product applications are coming up, no point in using beyond budgeting. But if pharma undergoes through a lot of changes, which happens, pharma will undergo through a lot of changes. You keep coming out with new products, new patents, new customers, new applications. So when there are a lot of changes which are happening in the industry, beyond budgeting would be suitable. Rapid changes in environment, or industries undergoing rapid changes or radical change, such as your BPR, you are trying to follow something called as business process re-engineering. With business process re-engineering, there is the way in which the industry was operating itself is undergoing change. Using management models such as TQM is total quality management, which focuses on continuous. In short, if there is stability, ignore beyond budgeting. If there is no stability, please go ahead with following beyond budgeting. There is, if you look at this slide, there were 2 points on benefits: more adaptive process and decentralized process. And there's another slide on benefits again. I don't know, in one of the exam question I see asked what are the advantages or what are the benefits of beyond budgeting, and what are the advantages to a company due to beyond budgeting, something like that was there. Technically to me both looked same. I don't know why they gave it as 2 separate scenario. So I think this was written, I'll come to that case study in some time. This I think came as benefits of beyond budgeting, and I think this was the answer to advantages of beyond budgeting. I know, something like that. You will see that in the case study, but technically both are same. You're going to see more or less the same thing. You will be able to react to the external environment, and you are empowering your teams to react to the external. You are giving that autonomy. Motivating manager. Why the manager is motivated? Because you are giving him full freedom. You are giving him the ability to react to the changes in the external environment. Eliminates behavioral issues, Behavioral issues is like you are not motivated or you have some issues with others in the company. All those challenges may get eliminated because the focus is on beating. The focus is on beating key ratios. The focus is not beating your internal person. Many a times what will happen is, if what you could have seen this, some of you could have seen this, if you have multiple managers in your audit firm, somewhere there could be a fight among the managers also. There could be an internal fight. It may not be explicitly mentioned, but somewhere the fight would be that I need to perform better than the other manager in the company. So managers do not focus on budget limit and work towards achieving key ratio. You want customer oriented teams, focuses on customer side, because you are not trying to beat your internal competitor. What happens is there is going to be good amount of transparency in the organization. Good amount of transparency in the organization. How transparency comes? When you have information sharing. When you have good amount of information sharing, the transparency is likely to come in. There are some principles of beyond budgeting. There are 6 principles on the management processes side, and there are 6 principles on the leadership side. Whatever processes I am going to say, this is the important part. All above steps were done only at the time of budgeting in traditional budgeting. Under beyond budgeting, they are done on a continuous basis. What are the points? I have already discussed them. Resource allocation. Allocation as needed rather than doing the allocation once a year. Coordination. You will coordinate across everyone in the company. There the coordination is not that much clear. The coordination is not that much good. Goals prepared once a year. Here you have aspirational goals which keep undergoing change based on rolling forecasts. You keep doing rolling forecasts. So based on the rolling forecast, what happens is your goals also keep undergoing change. Rewards based on relative performance. What is relative performance? Is I want to see how is your performance in relation to the industry. In relation to the industry. Planning once a year, continuous planning. Your planning is a continuous process. Controls. Control is basically how are you going to finally measure the performance of an individual, because at the end of the day I want also to measure the performance. I cannot just give saying I cannot give one I can give a free hand to the employee, but at the end of the day I also want to measure his performance as to how he is performing. So controls, here your focus is only on there are certain KPIs which an organization prepares. See this point, all above steps were done only at the time of budgeting in traditional budgeting. You can say some of the points like your goal setting happens once a year, your rewards happen once a year, planning happens once a year, coordination and controls you can ignore, and resource allocation happens once a year as far as the traditional budgeting is concerned. In beyond budgeting, you try to do all of them. You try to do all of them on a continuous basis. You try to do all of them on a continuous basis. Next, certain leadership principles. Under leadership principles, what we are trying to do is there were 2 parts to it. One, you want to react to the external environment. Second, you want to give autonomy to the teams. You want to give flexibility to the teams. So here focus is on customer. Focus is on customer. I want to ensure that customer is satisfied. I want to ensure that customer is satisfied. Prepare something called as customer oriented teams. Prepare something called as customer oriented teams with freedom to act. With freedom to act. So Bharadwaj Institute has given me full freedom. They have told me exactly, if you want to introduce a new batch, you introduce it. When whatever timing you want to keep, you keep it. But there are certain rules and regulations which they clearly have. There are clear rules and boundaries which are given to me. I cannot go beyond those boundaries. There are certain ethical principles which an organization has. I cannot compromise on them. So they have given me clear rules as to whatever the broad guidelines are given to me. Within that guidelines I can keep working. Within the guidelines I can keep working. Now listen. Under traditional process, what happens is, let's assume an organization starts with a target, then there's an actual performance, then there's a comparison, then there is a improvement action being taken up. You take an improvement action based on this. What happens in a beyond budgeting is, all these changes keep happening throughout the year. It's a continuous process. The process is a continuous process. There are certain aspirational goals which are given. One of the aspirational goal could be that you want to become a market leader in the automobile industry. So that could be an aspirational goal which you can have. Based on that, you break it down into the mini targets which you want to do, and these targets keep undergoing changes on a continuous basis depending on the changes which are happening in the external environment, with a clear focus on the end customer. There is a clear focus on the end customer. So customer oriented teams, I want to give them freedom to act, but with clear guidelines. The guidelines are very clear. You cannot go beyond the set boundaries. Tatas have their own boundaries. They don't want to move beyond those boundaries. Reliance could have different boundaries. So every organization have a way of operating. Don't go beyond those boundaries. Other things I've already explained. You want transparency within the organization. So how can transparency come? If you share information across the entire organization. Accountability. If I give you freedom, please be prepared for accountability as well. Just getting freedom alone doesn't work. If your audit manager says that you take care of this audit, I give you full freedom to complete the audit. In 15 days, if you don't complete, you will be questioned on that. You will be questioned on that because you have been given authority as well as there is a responsibility for you. Please be prepared to take up that responsibility. Focus is on marketplace success and not on internal results. I don't want to compete with others in the company. I want to compete with the industry. Now, an organization wants to implement beyond budgeting. An organization wants to implement beyond budgeting. Ignoring beyond budgeting, anything you want to implement, you will see TQM implementation, you will see Six Sigma implementation, you will see BPR implementation, you will see 5S implementation, you will see PI implementation. There are a lot of techniques which you will keep learning. Any technique you want to implement, few points will be standard across. One, there could be some planning to be done. There could be some planning to be done, or there is something called as a pre-introduction phase. Pre-introduction phase. In the pre-introduction phase, you will try to understand why is there a need for beyond budgeting. Why is there a need for TQM? Why is there a need for Six Sigma? Why is there a need for BPR? Why is there a need for process innovation? So first you will try to understand why does an organization want something like beyond budgeting, that could be the first area an organization would focus on. Why do I need beyond budgeting? Then every technique you implement, somewhere, whether it is there in this or not, there will be a training element there. There will be a training element, and post implementation also you want to check whether you are getting the desired result or not. This could be there in most of the technique. Here, define the case for change, that why do you want to move from the traditional budgeting to beyond budgeting. Convince the board. You will have to explain this to the board of management or to the top management as to why do you want to move to beyond budgeting. Get started, design and implement new process. All this is on the pre-implementation side. You are understanding why do you need beyond budgeting. You are getting the support of the top management, starting with it. Then you start training people. Why do you want to train people? Because they will have to understand how this is going to work. Rethink role of finance. Earlier the role of finance was extensive in nature. This may not come in other techniques. Okay, when I am talking about TQ, maybe a point like rethink role of finance may not be there. Under the earlier techniques, that is your traditional budgeting, the finance plays an important role because there is a continuous tracking of key performance indicator which are more of financial in nature. Here there will be a lot of non-financial factors which will come into picture. Change behavior, evaluate benefits. Evaluate benefits is post implementation. Are you getting the set benefits? What is the set benefits? Are you becoming a more adaptive organization to the external environment? Are you giving the required freedom to your employees so that your marketplace success improves? Consolidate gains. That is, if once you evaluate the benefits, if you are getting the desired benefits, then you see how do you want to continue with that. If you are not getting the desired benefits, you want to make certain changes so that you get the required benefits. With this chapter kind of gets over. Now I want you to do this because I have told this in the previous batch also. I don't know, some of the students did not do it, some did it, some did not do it, but I want this to be done 100% from each of you. I'll just tell you what needs to be done.
Okay, this is the theory as far as the budgetary control, the last day revision theory. You will use your mobile recorder, you sit in a quiet place and just read this thing and record it. Budgetary control. A budgetary control is a systematic control of operations through establishment of standards and targets at a normal voice. It includes you want to add some words, you add it, or you just do a plain reading of this. In 10 to 12 minutes this chapter recording will get over. Every day night before sleeping I want you to hear one audio, either chapter 10, chapter 9, chapter 8, chapter 7, chapter 6. Every day you will have to hear one chapter. That has to be very, very clear, because if you keep hearing, somewhere it will get registered in your mind. So I don't have a choice, because theory is critical. I want you to do this. I don't want to record and give all this and all. You're just going to sit in a quiet place. You're not going to add anything. You need not add any extra point also. Just do a plain reading. Budgetary control, systematic control of operations through establishment of standards and targets. Whatever speed is comfortable to you. You want to reduce the speed, do it at lesser speed. You want to increase. Most of the chapters will be 10 to 12 minutes. Some chapters could be more, because I think chapter 7 is an extensive bigger chapter, but most of the chapters will be 10 minutes or so. Most of you will have time. Some of you could listen to music also. You are left with no choice. I want you to hear this every day before sleeping. So as of now only chapter 10 is done. So every day you please hear chapter 10. Once I complete another chapter, you keep hearing that another chapter, whatever gets completed. As of now, record chapter 10 and keep hearing it multiple times. I am making it very clear. Not only this, it's not only before sleep. Sometimes you are traveling for a client meeting. You have time at your end. Keep listening to this for 10 minutes. Doesn't really matter. As long as you have 10 to 12 minutes waiting time. You're going for a client meeting and you need to wait there. Take your mobile phone, use your headset and keep listening to this. Keep listening to this, keep hearing it again and again, keep hearing it multiple times. This is how I cracked one of the paper which I had at final level, called as Information Systems Control and Audit. You guys you don't have that chapter as of now, but you could have seen that subject earlier in the form of EISSM. A theory based chapter becomes little difficult for most of you. So that is where I want you to keep hearing this again and again, multiple times. You want to add extra points, you add extra points. You want to read the detailed theory and record it, up to you, whatever you want to do, but I want you to record chapter 10. Whether you want to record this theory or whether you want to record the detailed theory may take away more time, so maybe that flexibility may not be there on a daily basis to hear, but 10 minutes is something you can easily spend every day. 10 minutes is easily possible. Later on, don't come back to me saying that theory I am not able to remember, I am not able to write the keywords. All that will come if you keep hearing it multiple times. Obviously I wouldn't want to follow such a strategy, because in a practical world just remembering things doesn't really help. It's only going to be application post clearing your chartered accountancy. So concept is something I can explain and you may understand now. If I ask you what is feedback control, you may be able to explain it, but exactly writing in those words may be challenging for some of you. That is where I want you to hear this multiple times. So please start recording chapter 10 today itself. 10-12 minutes of your time, nothing beyond that. Every day before sleep you will have to hear chapter 10 till I complete another chapter. Once I have completed another chapter, every day it's till you write your exams. Whatever subject you are preparing, last 10 minutes of the day is for SCMPE. Last 10 minutes of the day, whether you are doing chapter 10, whether you are doing chapter 9, whether you are doing FR, whether you are doing SFM, whatever you do till you come to your exams, whatever the exams could be 2 years down the line, 1.5 years down the line, 3 years down the line, I am least bothered about it. Whenever is your exam, I want this to be very, very clear that you will record and keep hearing it on a daily basis. One chapter every day, which is mostly 10 minutes of time. If some chapter is going to take more than 10 minutes, please split into two. Mostly chapter 7, which is on performance evaluation, that will take more time. So when you have significantly higher amount of time, you can split that chapter into 2-3 parts. So and every day just spend 10-12 minutes. So I don't want you to spend, so maybe there are 11 chapters may get recorded in 15 or 16 recordings. You may have to do 15 or 16 recordings for 11 chapters. 10 to 12 minutes is the timeline you keep in your mind, and accordingly please do this recording. This will become extremely handy when you finally write your exam. When you are writing your exam, it will become extremely handy. Just a small requirement from your side. I told students, some of them recorded. I don't want to record this and give, because I don't know what is there for me to record also, because I'm just going to read this. Nothing beyond this I'm going to do. In fact, you can allow your computer to read also, but I don't want to do all of that. I want you to do it so that you keep hearing in your own voice. So please record this. Today itself chapter 10 should be recorded. Tomorrow onwards you will have to keep hearing this multiple times. A simple requirement, a simple technique which I want to tell you. Clear? Okay, let's